I don't know whether you know this about me. I don't drink and I don't smoke. And once,
Okay.
when as a side, I'll tell you, in a board meeting, Kiran Majumdar Shaw, who was our board member, she told Mr. Dr. Vijay Mallya that Mr. Mallya, what kind of a chief marketing officer have you hired? He doesn't drink. So Vijay Mallya, he didn't. Fortunately, he never asked me in the interview, but he asked me. He said, "Is that?" So in his Vijay Mallya style, "Is that right?" So I said, yes, that's right. He says, that's all right. Your job is not to drink. Your job is to get others to drink. So I said, that most, I think I can do that. So he was an incredible man. I mean, the public narrative of him, Ritesh, is very, very different. But to come back to that yacht story, so after 2 days of non-stop party, where people were like passed out, he turns around to us and he says, "Okay, let's do our business review." Business review, लोगों की आंखें नहीं खुल रही है, and he was sharp as a button, Pritesh.
विजय माल्या को जानते हैं आप? How did Vijay Mallya become the king of good times? How Kingfisher used fashion, music, sports, and food to sell beer in a country where multiple states have banned alcohol altogether? Why are sports persons one of the most respected individuals in the world? What were some of the craziest things that happened behind the scenes at Kingfisher parties? Today we are talking with someone who's worked with Vijay Mallya for almost 9 years. हम बात कर रहे हैं समर सिंह शेखावत से, जो सीएमओ थे for United Breweries, the company behind Kingfisher. He launched multiple alcohol brands in his life and has headed marketing for Spencer's and Pepsi before that. He was born and brought up amidst guns, dogs, and elephants, and eventually worked with Vijay Mallya during his best days. In this episode, we recall some of the craziest and unbelievable stories about those days. This episode is probably the most controversial discussion I have ever recorded, and we shot way past our recording schedules too. Also, this is a power packed discussion around life in general. So, end tak dekho. But one last bit, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to GoVenture channel at this point. Hi Samar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pritesh. Thank you.
So, Summer, you had a brilliant stint running and launching multiple Kingfisher brands, right, during your days working with Vijay Mallya. I want to start with your days at Kingfisher. How did you help brand Kingfisher in a country where alcohol जो है ना, is still a taboo, massive taboo है, in a lot of regions? What kind of brainstorming would go into it?
Good question, Pritesh. See, the way we saw it, we were not selling a beer. We were selling a lifestyle. We were selling a lifestyle that is accessible to everyone. We were selling values of fun, glamour, bonding, brotherhood, camaraderie, yari, dosti. Those were the values that we were selling. Those values happened to be in the form of a beer. And we made sure that we were very democratic, very accessible and very inclusive. इसका मतलब क्या है कि भाई आप सोच सकते हो कि एक आदमी गांव में चारपाई पे बैठ करके भी किंगफिशर पी सकता है। एक सीईओ जो है अपनी मर्सिडीज से निकल करके अपने 5 बेडरूम घर में जाकर भी किंगफिशर पी सकता है। And someone like you can drink it, someone like me can drink it. So we were very democratic, very inclusive. There was no social distinctions. Uh, the second thing, of course, that we sold what we call accessible aristocracy. I'll give you an example of Amitabh Bachchan. Now, Amitabh Bachchan, you can see him as a farmer, and you can even see him as a royal family person. He will fit in with both places. So we made sure that Kingfisher didn't exclude anyone. It was for everyone. That's number one. Number two, of course, Vijay Mallya's own personality, his own persona, the King of Good Times. In fact, a little later, I'll tell you a very interesting story about the King of Good Times. And, all that obviously contributed to the hype and the glamour around Kingfisher. We used to call Pritesh, we used to call Kingfisher as a lubricant for the good times. If you want to have, like, you have a lubricant to your car or a lubricant to your motorcycle, or this is the oil or the lubricant to your good times. So also, I think because we concentrated on the values of fun, glamour, yari, dosti, inclusion, and our language was very, very non-controversial. We never took a stand, as I'm seeing a lot of brands taking stands on woke issues and purpose-driven things, usually on matters that have absolutely nothing to do with their business or brand. We never fell into that trap. It was all about welcoming everyone, having a good time, and sort of making sure we didn't get too serious about it. So that was the reason, and of course, the way we sold it was on four platforms of sports, because beer and sports is as old as creation. Sports, food, music, fashion. So on
Hmm.
sports, we sponsored every possible thing. I know that you're going to ask me about it a little later, but from IPL to ISL to Derby horse racing to sailing to hockey to tennis to the running marathons to football, Formula One racing, literally every sport under the sun. Food is very important because in India, food and beer go well together. So we had a big program on the association of food and beer, what is today called food pairing. Then music. We were the first people to get live music shows into this country at scale. So, some of the biggest international artists were brought down by Kingfisher, and we sort of got into the whole thing of massive, large format music shows, and of course, fashion. So we had the Kingfisher calendar, we had the channel on, well, we co-owned NDTV Good Times channel at one point in time,
Hmm.
and we had something called the Hunt for the Kingfisher Calendar Girl as a curated program on that. सो बेसिकली प्रीतेश, हिंदुस्तान में क्या होता है ना कि आपको एडवर्टाइजिंग अलाउड नहीं है इस कैटेगरी में, तो हमें क्या करना
Hmm.
पड़ता है, हमें ओकेजन और एसोसिएशन के बारे में बात करना है। मतलब जितने ओकेजन पर हम आपको बियर का एक्सपीरियंस दे सकते हैं और जितने सिचुएशंस में हम दे सकते हैं, इसीलिए वो स्पॉन्सरशिप्स, इवेंट्स, एक्टिवेशन की वजह से हुआ था। और हमारा लक्ष्य एक ही था कि रोज हम नए कस्टमर को रिक्रूट करें, क्योंकि कोई भी ब्रांड हो प्रीतेश, every day a brand is going to lose customers. Every
Hmm.
day your attempt is to add more customers than you lose, because वो पुराने जमाने में कहते थे ना, ब्रांड लॉयल्टी। आज
Hmm.
के जमाने में there is nothing called brand loyalty, there is called customer loyalty. Don't expect customers to be loyal to brands, expect brands to be loyal to customers. So that was hope that was how we did it.
So Kingfisher eventually happened to associate themselves with uh, good times, right? And that's how the king of good times came into picture. You were a lubricant to good times, right? You were associated
Correct.
with sports, food, music, fashion, everything that probably was cool back then. Cool is still cool, and people used to have fun and probably see as fun. All the industries that people see as fun
Yep.
today, right? Yep, yep. And I want to understand what are some of the since you mentioned Vijay Mallya, since you mentioned Kingfisher and Kingfisher, like the growth story of Kingfisher was crazy, right? क्या सबसे craziest moments थे that you had during your Kingfisher days?
Some of the moments I will not be able to talk on your platform. I don't know whether it's an age gated or age restricted platform, but yeah, there were many, many moments. There was one moment where, for instance, when in the Monaco Grand Prix Formula One racing, there used to be an after party after the Formula One races, and the official after party कोई नहीं जाता था. Everyone would come to Vijay Mallya's party on his yacht. He has two
Mhm.
yachts. The larger yacht was called the Indian Empress. वो मोनाको में समुंदर में होती थी, एंड मतलब आप जो नाम लेना चाहते हैं, that person is there. From the biggest international supermodels to all the Formula One drivers and racers, their team managers, anyone, the most glamorous Hollywood actors and actresses, they would all come there. And the party would last 48 hours non-stop.
Mhm.
And imagine being on a yacht where you're the only person who's not drinking. because I don't know whether you know this about me. I don't drink and I don't smoke. And once,
Okay.
when as a side, I'll tell you, in a board meeting, Kiran Majumdar Shaw, who was our board member, she told Mr. Dr. Vijay Mallya that, Mr. Mallya, what kind of a chief marketing officer have you hired? He doesn't drink. So Vijay Mallya, he didn't. Fortunately, he never asked me in the interview, but he asked me. He said, "Is that so?" In his Vijay Mallya style, is that right? So I said, "Yes, that's right." So he says, "That's all right. Your job is not to drink. Your job is to get others to drink." So I said, "How that most? I think I can do that." So he was an incredible man. I mean, the public narrative of him, Ritesh, is very very different. But to come back to that yacht story, so after 2 days of non-stop partying, where people were like passed out, he turns around to us and he says, "Okay, let's do our business review." Now, business review, लोगों की आंखें नहीं खुल रही, and he was sharp as a button, Pritesh. So that's one story. We had several other stories of, one of the things that Vijay Mallya was notorious for was time management. As in, he was terrible at time management. तो अगर उन्होंने आपको मीटिंग के लिए बुला लिया है, अगर आपको 10 बजे बुलाया है, नाउ इट कुड बी 10 o'clock इन द मॉर्निंग और 10 o'clock एट नाइट or 10 o'clock the next day. ये कि इसकी कोई गारंटी नहीं है. There are times when I have waited for him for 12 hours in his reception. And my colleagues used to tell me, आप माल्या साहब से मिलने जा रहे हो तो अपना लैपटॉप ले जाना, लैपटॉप चार्जर ले जाना, फोन ले जाना, फोन चार्जर ले जाना, खाना पीना सोने सबका इंतजाम आपको होगा वहाँ पर. And there have been times where I actually gone out to sleep in the sofas and empty rooms waiting for his meeting. But ये बात है, he will never leave without meeting you. अगर आपको बोल दिया कि आपसे मिलेंगे, मिलेंगे जरूर. कितने बजे मिलेंगे आप नहीं पूछ सकते. इनफैक्ट अ वेरी फनी स्टोरी हैपेंड व्हेन आई लैंडेड अप इन बैंगलोर फॉर माय इंटरव्यू. The HR head. So I had 4 interviews over 6 months. I first had an interview with the head of HR. एक महीने तक कोई खबर नहीं. मैंने सोचा चलो भाई नहीं हो रहा है. उस समय मैं कलकत्ते में था, स्पेंसर्स में. एक महीने के बाद फोन आया कि भाई जॉइंट मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर के साथ इंटरव्यू होना है. मैंने ठीक है भाई, फिर से गया मैं कलकत्ते. एंड इन दोज डेज कैलकाटा टू बैंगलोर लाइक अराउंड वन वे 7 hours, बिकॉज इट्स अ लॉन्ग टाइम, कम्यूट टाइम वगैरह वगैरह. तो जॉइंट मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर के साथ इंटरव्यू हुआ. वापस आके एक महीने तक कोई खबर नहीं. फिर एक महीने के बाद खबर आई कि भाई मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर के साथ इंटरव्यू. तो गए. फिर एक महीने तक कोई खबर नहीं. फिर एक महीने के बाद फोन आया कि भाई आपका इंटरव्यू विजय माल्या के साथ है. तो मैंने बोला अच्छा, अब तो सीरियस मामला हो गया. Anyway, so I landed up. This was about end of July 2000, 2009. End of July 2009. And last week of July. So I was supposed to meet Vijay Mallya. I reached there. I find out that the head of HR is on holiday in Goa. So मैं बोला अब क्या करें. So his secretary came and gave me a lot of magazines. I said I am supposed to have an interview with Vijay Mallya. और 5:30 जैसे 8 8:30 की मेरी रिटर्न फ्लाइट है. बिकॉज मैंने सुना था कहानियां कि भाई बहुत वक्त लेते हैं. तो मैंने बोला वेयर इज विजय माल्या. सो ही सेड ही इज इन सिंगापुर. आई सेड व्हाट. आई सेड ही इज सपोज्ड टू मीट मी एट 5 o'clock. ही सेड yeah, don't worry, he'll be here. I said, I'm calculating the distance between Singapore and Bangalore and stuff. So I kept waiting the whole day. बहुत जबरदस्त खाना, लंच, चाय वाय सब कुछ हो रही है. एंड बाय अबाउट 4:30 आई एम गेटिंग रियली नर्वस, थिंकिंग सर मुझे जाना है वापस कलकत्ते. बिकॉज अगले दिन मुझे संजीव गोयनका के सामने एक प्रेजेंटेशन करना है. वो जो मेरे बॉस थे, जो प्रीवियस बॉस थे.
Spencers.
एनीवे, को 5 बजे मुझे बुलाया गया ऊपर. तो मैं सेक्रेटरी से बोल रहा हूँ कि भाई इंटरव्यू, हाँ हाँ मिस्टर मालिया हैज अराइव्ड एंड यू आर बीइंग कॉल्ड अपस्टेयर्स. So while going, I was waiting outside for 2 minutes outside and talking to his secretary. And I said, I need to go back, and the last flight is at like 8:30, and I have to reach at least. In those days, you have to reach 1 hour before departure. Now it is 2 hours, and it was another in peak traffic time, just another 1.5 hours to the airport in Bangalore. मैं airport खुल चुका था. तो ऐसे देखो, आप 5 बज गए, 6 बजे तक मुझे निकलना है, 7:30 पहुंचूंगा, 8:30 की फ्लाइट है. So she says, no, don't worry. I said, don't worry means if I miss the flight. He says, no, no, we have many planes of our own. We will send you back on one of our own planes. I said, oh, that I didn't consider. But anyway, the interview went off well, and I made it to my flight also. As it transpired, my flight was a little delayed. But working with Vijay Mallya across the world was great fun. Uh, एक बार हम गोवा में गए थे, एंड वी हैड अ प्रेजेंटेशन टू हिम. एंड माय प्रेजेंटेशन, जैसे ही हम पहुंचे उनके गोवा घर में, तो माल्या साहब का कोई नामो निशान नहीं है. कहाँ है जी? तो ही इज one of his executive assistant hands me a binoculars. और बाइनोकुलर वो देखिए सर समुंदर में वाटर स्कूटर पर है 1 किलोमीटर दूर. So he's on a water scooter. One comes, I'm looking like this, and I said, okay. अब फिर क्या हुआ? He sprained his leg while while riding the water scooter. So he comes in for the presentation in shorts and a Kingfisher T-shirt जो मैंने बनवाई थी, and मतलब entire leg in crepe bandage और मतलब very with great difficulty he comes in. Anyway, रात के 10 बजे प्रीतेश मेरा इंटरव्यू मेरा मेरा प्रेजेंटेशन शुरू हुआ. एंड मैं आई एम प्रेजेंटिंग समथिंग और अगर मैं स्लाइड एंड ही नीचे देख रहे हैं फोन पर कुछ ऐसे कर रहे हैं कभी कभी. तो मैंने स्लाइड चेंज की तो बोलते हैं गो बैक. बोला सर हाउ डिड यू इवन नो दैट आई हैव चेंज द स्लाइड. एंड देन ही लुक अप लाइक दिस एंड ही सेज on the seventh line of the 19th slide you said this, but on the fourth line of the 26th slide you are saying this. I don't think the two match with each other. और मैं अपना सिर खुजा रहा हूँ 1 मिनट सर. सो द मैन्स मेमोरी is incredible and I have many stories like this. Anyway, सब 4 बजे हम लोग खत्म किया. So he says, now I have Pritesh, I think I have a 10 o'clock flight back to Goa the next morning. Sorry, back from Goa back to Bangalore. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. And he's saying, you want to have dinner? हम सब थे. So dinner at 4 in Goa. I said, कहाँ? He said that you don't worry. So there's a multi-cuisine restaurant called La Cucini, that is run by a husband and wife who have 2 3 big dogs. उन्होंने उनको फोन किया, उठाया, उन्होंने अपने सारे शेफ्स वगैरह वापस बुलाए. 4 5 बजे हमारा डिनर शुरू हुआ, 5 a.m. in the morning, 7 बजे तक. देन ही कॉल्स मी एंड ही सिटिंग एट द हेड ऑफ द टेबल एंड से समर. तो आई इग्नोर्ड हिम बिकॉज मेरे से भी सीनियर लोग थे वहां पर. 2 बार बोला. देन आई फाइनली वेंट एंड सैट डाउन नेक्स्ट टू. तो मेरे कंधे पर हाथ रखते हैं, बोलते हैं किंग ऑफ गुड टाइम्स कौन है. मैं बोला यार सत्यानाश, ये जवाब मुझसे क्यों पूछ रहे हो सवाल. Then he asked me, who is the king of good times? And before I could answer, Pritesh, he picks up a bottle of Kingfisher beer. And he says, this is the king of good times. And he used some other word. He says, ये media लोग ने मुझे king of good times बना दिया, but it is basically the bottle. So like this, I have many stories. I'll tell you one last story because I know that your time is limited. I was in the gym one day because I work out and run. तो मुझे और क्या होता है जिम में मैं 6 से 8 बजे जाता था शाम को यूपी में. एंड I used to put my phone on silent, and my phone was lying inside my office bag, which is inside the changing room. Outside, I had nothing. I'm not one of those selfie le rahe gym. I don't do any of that stuff. So I came back and I saw 2 missed calls from Vijay Mallya. This shit, kya hua? And he knows I'm in the gym from 6 to 8. He never used to call me. So I called him back. His phone was switched off. So I sent a message saying, "Sorry, boss, I was in the gym. Call me when you get to land." I went home, had a bath, changed, dinner, winner, सो गया. सुबह उठा तो 2 o'clock in the morning I saw 2 more missed calls from Vijay Mallya. मेरा फोन साइलेंट पे था. मैंने बोला बेटा मेरी नौकरी गई. It's gone. So then I found out in the morning. I said, we used to call him VJM. Is VJM in town? So yeah, he's in the office. He's coming early today, and he wanted to see you. I said, shit. And it must have been 1 or 2 years. I said, yeah, my performance तो ठीक ही रही है. I mean, everything should be okay. Anyway, तो मैं वहाँ पहुँचा, and I've got 4 missed calls from Vijay Mallya's mobile, and I've not answered the phone. So I mean, I'm definitely going to get sacked. So, heart beating. I go into his office. He looks at me. He says, "Where have you been?" So I said, "Sir, I'm so sorry." He says, "No, no, come here, come here." I come there. He turns his chair around and shows me his knee. He said, my knee has been hurting because I've been doing these exercises. Can you tell me? I said, hey, Bhagwan, naukri bach gayi that he's been. So he was calling me to seek my advice on certain injuries and also, there are many such stories in London, and riding in his Rolls Royce and, all over the world. But yeah, but in amazing man, I've had presentations at 2 in the morning where he gets up and says, you know what, you'll have to excuse me for half an hour because I'm negotiating to buy a painting and I'm online with Sotheby's or Christie's and they're selling a Renoir or a Monet or a Picasso or Van Gogh, etc. I said, "Do you mind?" I said, "No, boss, I don't mind. Please go ahead." But amazing man, Pritesh, incredible memory, extremely generous. His knowledge is unbeatable. I mean, he's the kind of person if he meets you once, you may have forgotten. Actually, you won't forget because you met Vijay Mallya, but he will remember where you met, what you were wearing, where it was, what was discussed, everything. Unbelievable man. And
I
very
think for
hard working, because I mean, frankly, remember he acquired his father's empire at the age of 28. He was
Mhm.
only 28, and he took it to a level that was unthinkable, and very professional, extremely professional. Never interfered in working. Tremendous leader. You know, very bad manager. Because management में क्या होता है प्रत्येक चवन्नी का धंधा है हर रुपये को आपको देखना है but amazing leader, amazing vision, and full of spirits, full of life. I have never seen him depressed. I have never seen him upset. I have never seen him angry. I have no hesitation in saying that he is the greatest boss I ever had in my life.
I think, but Vijay Mallya has been painted very differently, right?
Correct.
Media's देखोगे
That's what I was going to say. The public narrative of him is very unfair. Did he make mistakes? Absolutely. At the very least, he should have paid everyone's salaries for sure. But I think it was a question of being badly advised by lawyers, bankers, and financiers. But at the end of the day, it is your decision whether you want to take that advice or not. So that's all I can say. But yes, the narrative of him, and you see, the thing is, I'll tell you what people don't like about him, Pritesh, is that he's not a hypocrite. What you see is what you get. If he has those cars and houses and girls and glamour lifestyle, he doesn't hide anything. It is what it is. Without taking names of some very famous politicians, because I don't want your show to get shut down, there are politicians in India who will have 10 times, 100 times what Vijay Mallya has. और उनको देखकर आप बता नहीं सकते सब छुपा हुआ है. That was one thing great about Vijay Mallya. There was no hypocrisy about him, and I admire and respect a man like that.
But does that work in the liquor industry, especially?
Well, actually, it did work in the liquor industry for that time. See, Pritesh,
Mhm.
you're a young guy. As you grow up, you'll realize that everything has relevance and context. Certain
Mhm.
things that one could do and say, let's say certain things my father could do and say, I couldn't do and say. Many things that I can do and say, my daughter who's in New York cannot do and say because times change, relevance changes, context changes. For instance, today, the beer industry is very different from what it was even 50, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Consumers have changed. The exposure that your generation has. Growing up, you've got every possible brand in every possible category from the world available to you. Even one generation ago in my time, it was not so. So it's a very different India, now, and it worked brilliantly in its time. Would it work again today? Maybe not.
Hmm. But Summer, hearing from the moments that you talked about, it really piques my interest to hear about the moments that we can't talk about.
Now, well, we can talk about it, but I can't put it on your show.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
all I can say is go and have a look at my Facebook profile picture and the background, and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that is something that we will pick up after the
Yeah,
episode. But I want to go back to your life a bit, and I want to get a glimpse from your days growing up. You had a very unique upbringing, right? The journey has been extremely interesting, extremely fascinating. You had a very unique childhood as well. Give us a glimpse of how things were back then.
yeah. I think that's very well put, Pritesh. I like to think that my brother and I had grew up in a time and a land that doesn't exist anymore. And I'll explain what I mean by that. My father was joined T in 1957. He was 17 and a half years old. He had just finished his class. उस ज़माने में 11वीं क्लास तक स्कूल होता था. He had finished his class 11, what they used to call senior Cambridge from St. Joseph's, Dehradun. And he had got admission in St. Stephen's College in Delhi, but did not join. He got an offer to join T, a company called Andrew Yule, which was a British company. Today it's a public sector government company, and joined T in what is called Duars today in North Bengal. And he lived. He was in 1957. He was the third Indian to join T. All his friends were English, Irish, Australian, Canadian, Scottish, and a very few Indian planters. When I was born, all my friends were Irish, Canadian, Scottish, Australian. We had English, British governesses and nannies teaching us, which is why I speak the way I do as well. So you're right. It was an incredible, and when I tell people about what we saw, I mean, people cannot conceive it, they cannot believe it. So Growing up in the tea gardens, in outdoors, there was no forget mobile phone. There were no regular telephones either. Because they were through jungles, and some of these gardens, the nearest town was 100 kilometers. You had to drive 100 kilometers through jungle to get to those towns. So while driving, to see a wild elephant or a wild tiger or a wild leopard or wild boars was very common. Snakes coming into your house every day, tigers roaming around, and leopards in our lawns. Every year, once or twice, it would happen. Wild tiger. Then tennis club nights, tennis club dances, playing sort of swimming galas. Very British, very Brown Sahib sort of kind of upbringing. Also very macho, very masculine British. There were no women. The only lady there was my mother, and my brother and I and dad. My dad was Clint Eastwood, like as red blooded, as they come. A really strong guy, handsome, complete British sort of kind of guy, amazing shikari, amazing sports person, the most stylish person I've ever met. He was like God to us, I mean, it's only when you grow up later you realize that he's also a human being with his, frailties and strong points. So, a lot of sports, a lot of shooting. We can't say that today, but बहुत शिकार किया है यार. From wild boars to deers to jungly murgi, pigeons, everything. I mean, think of it this way: I was 50. I learned how to drive when by the time I was 13 years old. By at the age of 13, I had my license. फुल लाइसेंस. उसमें 18 साल की उम्र लिख करके वो जो आरटीओ का लोकल आरटीओ वाला, तो मेरे पिताजी घर आकर के पैर छू करके हमारे. एंड द बंगलोज मैन, ह्यूज बंगलोज, like 1 acre 2 acre bungalows. My mother had 20 servants. We had about 20 cows, about 100 chickens, 20, 30 guinea pigs, two elephants, four dogs, 10, 15 rabbits,
Two
20,
elephants
30
you mentioned.
goats. Yeah, elephant because for the government logging operations. I mean, the logging operations in the garden. And sometimes when we wanted to cross the river, we'll just get onto the elephant back and cross the river. Although half the time we would swim ourselves. From the age of 15 onwards, maybe even younger, my brother and I would take guns, ammunition, our two gun dogs, and two, helpers, as they call, were two shikaris with us, with ham sandwiches, ham and cheese sandwiches, and coffee flasks, and disappear into the jungle for up to 2 to 3 days. Can you imagine 15-year-old kids doing that today in the jungles of Assam, coming back with murgis and deer and wild boar and stuff? And can you imagine trusting your parents? I mean, your parents trusting you to do that. So, like when I tell this to my friends, it's they don't believe it. They don't believe it. I have to show them pictures and stuff like that. So, not only that, can you imagine? My mother was 21 and my father was 23 when they got married. And my mother was an MA in anthropology from Lucknow University, and my father was not even a graduate. I mean, my mother is, because my father's passed away, but my mother's still there. My mother, you know what she did, Pritesh? She started a school in a tea garden club in Assam. There's a district called Moran district. So Moran club started a CBSE school, and she had a Studebaker station wagon. All the cars were all foreign and stuff. I've driven Bedford trucks, World War II Bedford trucks, tractors, jeeps, everything. In fact, I learned how to drive four wheelers way before I learned how to drive a motorcycle. मोटरसाइकिल तो बाद में 18-19 की उम्र में मैंने सीखा था. And my mother would sort of go from garden to garden, picking up. It's a big station wagon, Studebaker station, picking up all the other planters' wives and their children, and go to the school. And all the wives were teachers, and all the children were students. And we were taught exactly the way the British taught. And a couple of the English and Irish, Scottish planters' wives were also teachers before they got married and came to India. So the education I got till the age of 7, I was sort of, I don't want to say homeschooled, but I was club school. And do you know the funny thing, Pritesh? That Moran Club school is today a registered CBSE school started by my mother and some others. So, it was an incredible life, incredible childhood, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I have been bitten by dogs. I was bitten by a rabid dog, and my brother and and the dog bit our two dogs as well. And can you imagine at the age of, I think this was in 83, I was maybe 17, 18 years old. Uh, and my brother and I would drive 50 kilometers through jungles and other tea gardens, along with my two dogs, my brother and myself. every day to get injections in our stomach. उस जमाने में वो 21 इंजेक्शन मिलते थे
किस
स्टमक में.
पेट में?
So and every day and then driving on those road के धड़ 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 जा रहे हैं, मतलब पेट में क्या, आफ्टर 7 or 8 days ना आपके आपके पेट पर जगह नहीं है कहाँ इंजेक्शन, बिकॉज वो बिल्कुल मस्सों की तरह हो जाते हैं, बिकॉज लाइक हार्ड स्टोन. एंड हाफ वे थ्रू दिस द डॉक्टर टेल्स मी, डॉक्टर क्या कंपाउंडर टाइप आदमी था वो कंपाउंडर बोलता है, बाबा हमको हमें गलती किया. मैंने बोला क्या गलती किया? वो आपको 10 ml की जगह हम 5 ml दे रहा है, तो आपका जितना इंजेक्शन अभी तक हो चुका है 20 इंजेक्शन, वो एक्चुअली 10 इंजेक्शन के बराबर है, तो आपको 11 और देना है. So, I mean, can you imagine today's 18-year-old kids doing this? I mean, my brother and I, with one driver, we would drive, and two dogs. And every day we'd reach that clinic. Every day, 50 kilometers going, 50 kilometers coming through jungle and stuff like that. पहले कुत्तों को इंजेक्शन लगवाए, फिर मेरे भाई और मैं, and then we drive back. We do this, so I mean, can you imagine kids doing that today? And one other last episode, हम लोग शिकार पर गए थे in one of my dad's gardens, and we came back. उस दिन कुछ खास मिला नहीं था. One of those guys who was with me, by mistake, he shot me through the hand. तो गोली
Oh.
मेरे हाथ से निकल गई बाहर. Even today, I can't show you, but the nerves on this side have been shot away. तो and पूरा खून वून निकल रहा है and stuff, and वो पुलिस केस होने वाला था, but then and then with the bandage on my hand, I drove the jeep to go to the Silchar town, which is a big town today. And there we went to the government hospital, and he knew immediately it's a bullet hole. So he said, "ये कैसा हुआ?" I said, "Shooting accident वगैरह." नहीं नहीं, आप FIR लॉन्च करिए. मैंने बोला कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं. आप पूरा देखिए, स्टिचिंग विचिंग करिए, सब कुछ. इसे आप बहुत लकी है कि आपके हड्डियां मिस हो गई. इट वेंट बिटवीन द फिंगर्स, योर बोन्स आर गॉट. सो बाहर से तो क्लोज हो गया हफ्ते 10 दिन में. अंदर से इट फेल्ट अ लॉट. सो आई हैड टू देन कैरी अ स्क्वाश बॉल और अ टेनिस बॉल इन माय हैंड and keep doing that physiotherapy. आज भी निशान है, आपको देखेगा नहीं उतना, it has to be seen. But I mean, these kind of stories are like unbelievable stories.
I think, do you think, Samar, that shaped you for the CMO role at Kingfisher? Because I believe Kingfisher days were also really, really unheard of, and the kind of way in which Kingfisher positioned itself, and the kind of way in which Vijay Mallya also positioned himself, that was unseen, unheard of.
I think what it prepared me for, not only Kingfisher, Pritesh, I think it prepared me for life in general. It prepared me for, and I know you have a question later on the challenges and obstacles that I faced in my career. And because my father was a very, very strong man, physically very powerful, and my mother was very, very strong mentally. Even today she's stubborn as an ox. In fact, I'll tell you what my about my father. And I learned, and my father was the typical old school Pritesh, where he wouldn't tell you what to do. You had to observe what he was doing and learn from him. He never taught me a thing in his life. Yet he taught me everything because I looked at him and I learned from him. Now, can you imagine? जिस दिन मुझे गोली लगी थी, I was sitting on the veranda and I immediately went into shock. I was shivering and feeling cold. And when you go into shock, you start feeling cold, even though it was tropical summer outside. हमारे घर में चौकीदार जो था वो बंगलो का, he ran to the you know to my father's office, which was about 200 meters away. And he burst into my father's office and he said just this much, बड़े बाबा को गोली लग गया है. My father has no other information. Acha, now that day the vehicles had gone to town or something, so he opened his door, walked down 200 meters to the bungalow. He did not run, he walked. And he saw me sitting at the veranda, and he looked, as he was coming, he just waved to me, and he said hi. He took my nickname. He said, "Hi, you look okay." And I didn't think, but later on when I became a parent myself, I think to myself how difficult that 200-meter walk must have been, not knowing what awaits you. So, what I say, I mean, my father was the coolest man ever. And I think growing up in the outdoors, etc., रोज लीच लगती थी. आप बाथरूम खोलो तो सांप बैठा हुआ है उसके अंदर, फ्लश में देखो तो गेको बैठी हुई है. I mean, we learned how to expect the unexpected and manage. And pardon my saying so, not like today's namby-pamby generation that is gets triggered by things and all that. There was no question of that. If we did any of that, we'd get two tight slaps from my mother and my father, और हमारे चक्र वक्र सब खुल जाता है. All our chakras would open with that. So yeah, I think it prepared me for life, not just working at Kingfisher.
I think those are some crazy stories. Like you said, those
And I've
today in
censored
today's
50% of it for your platform.
I think some of these stories actually in today's world seem so unbelievable,
Yeah, yeah.
unheard of,
Like I said,
and
na, it was a
unrelatable.
time and land that doesn't exist anymore, Pritesh.
Okay, let's fast forward to the present day, right? You have been consulting in an independent capacity now. Uh, COVID, but COVID was a very unimaginable, unfortunate thing that happened in the world. Are there any COVID related challenges that you had to face when
Of
building your
course,
consulting practice?
absolutely. Well, COVID related, the first thing is that businesses reduced spends dramatically. You see, I've always worked for people. I worked in various organizations for 30 years, Pritesh. और मैंने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था कि भाई मैं अपने लिए काम करूंगा. मैं सोचा यार हम सर्विस क्लास, मिडिल क्लास, सर्विस क्लास वाले लोग हैं. And then when I left UB, I thought कि यार मुझे तो मतलब look at my background, look at my career, कहाँ का नहीं काम किया, साले 10 नौकरियां ऐसे मिलेंगी. I didn't even get a single job. Maybe I got two inquiries which reached up to the final stage. In one case, the money was not working out. And in the second case, they never got back to me. After telling me, I don't want to take the names of the company, they're very, very amongst the biggest industrial groups in the country today. In fact, I think number one group and very close to. So you can understand who we are talking about.
Mhm.
But and the second one was that we will ask our HR to get back to you with an offer, and that never happened. So I said, you know what, I need to start doing something myself. And frankly, I'm very glad because it's been almost 5 years that I've been a consultant. और आज मैं ये सोचता हूँ पृथ्वी कि लोगों के साथ 30 साल नौकरी की और 5 साल कंसल्टेंट रहा हूँ and I would never go back. I would never dream of working for anyone else, frankly, because now I've got offers and all. I said, "Nahi, bhaiya," and I've got my own time and stuff, and I'm learning a lot. My personal and professional growth has been incredible. But going back to your COVID time, businesses reduced spends because there was so much uncertainty. You were not allowed to go out. People were not buying. Of course, e-commerce exploded. Mom and pop stores started shutting down. People started going back to their parents' houses and stuff because they said, "Yes, South India mein bolte na, I'm going back to my native. I'm going to native, sir." So they started going there, and I had to start from scratch all over again, Pritesh. Imagine when I left UB, my salary was 2.5 crores.
Mhm.
When I started as a consultant, I have done assignments for 5,000 rupees.
Mhm.
2.5 करोड़ कमाने के बाद 5,000 रुपए से मैंने शुरू किया 5 साल पहले. From 5 it went to 10 to 15, 20, 50, 1, 2, 3, 4 lakhs, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is. But I started from scratch all over again. So businesses reduce spend. The other thing I realized, Pritesh, was कि आपके जितने दोस्त हैं ना वो आपके लिए कुछ नहीं करेंगे. योर सो कॉल्ड फ्रेंड्स जो आप जिनको आप 25-30 साल से जानते हो, 10-15-20-25-30 साल से जानते हो, कोई बिजनेस नहीं मिला बॉस उनसे. चिंद एक एक आधा मतलब असाइनमेंट मिला होगा. बट लाइफ इज ऑल अबाउट बैलेंस. जितना बिजनेस मिला, इट ऑल केम फ्रॉम स्ट्रेंजर्स, पीपल
Mhm.
दैट आई डिड नॉट नो. तो लाइफ का नियम यही है. मतलब जहां से आप सोचते हो कि आपको मतलब कुछ मिलेगा, वहां से नहीं मिलता है. और जहां से मिलता है आपने कभी सोचा नहीं होगा कि वहां से मिलेगा. सो दैट वाज द सेकंड थिंग. Of course, 2 years ago I lost my father, so that was also a very tough one. I lost him during COVID, but not to COVID. Unfortunately, he fell down in his house, hit his head on the ground, and had a brain hemorrhage, and he was in the ICU for 45 days, and I was with him every day for those 45 days, etc. He didn't survive, unfortunately. And I've gone through months with zero earnings. After earning 2.5 crores a year, I've gone through months with zero earnings. Zero means zero. Nil bata
Mhm.
shunya.
Mhm.
Also, just after I left UB, we decided to send our daughter to the Berkeley College of Music. She's an incredibly talented singer, songwriter, and music producer. Now she's graduated a year ago and she's singing and she's a professional musician in New York. But uski sari, matlab, my decision to leave UB was coincided with our decision to send her overseas. And I'd already
Mhm.
promised her that, so I couldn't take back my decision. So the entire education I did while earning 0 rupees. And you know how expensive a college graduation in America is. Matlab 60% of my retirement fund is gone there. So which is why I have to be a consultant for many, many years to, earn money for myself for the rest of my, let's say, rest of my life. And
Mhm.
one other interesting personal challenges that we faced was So when COVID first started, I started getting a sense that things are not going to go well. And even though we hadn't received any official information from the US, I called up my daughter and I said, I think your college is going to shut down. I think the US is going to shut down. We need to get you out from there. And Pritesh,
Mm-hmm.
thank God we took that decision, because there are friends of mine whose daughters and sons were stuck for 1.5, 2 years after that. They didn't see them
Mm-hmm.
because they were not allowed to travel. So I evacuated my daughter immediately about it, and she landed, if I recall correctly, on the 17th of March 2020. और
Mm-hmm.
जिस दिन उन्होंने लैंड किया था, she landed in the evening. That same midnight on that day, she landed early morning. Same midnight on that day, the embargo came. All flights stopped. So we literally
Mm-hmm.
got out in the nick of time. तो हमने सोचा यार, चलो ये हो रहा है तो where will your child be the safest? In your own home.
Mm-hmm.
Because अब अमेरिका में है तो मतलब कैसे खाना होगा पीना होगा क्या, we didn't know. And so that was one sort of harrowing time. And but the challenge that my daughter went through, she did the next semester was all online, Pritish, and online on Eastern time, which means classes started at 12 midnight
Mm-hmm.
and finished at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now imagine I'm working a full day on consulting. My wife is involved with Rotary and social work. We're working the whole day, and then at night, my wife is keeping awake to feed. So my daughter would have breakfast at 11 p.m. at night. So the body clock was on Boston time because Boston is where she had come from. And then she would go to sleep. Then we'd wake up at 3 in the morning and feed her lunch, or give lunch to her. At 6:37, when we were waking up in the morning, she's having dinner. Then she goes to sleep, and we had to keep very quiet because she needs to sleep. और घर बाजू के फ्लैट में कंस्ट्रक्शन ड्रिलिंग विलिंग, तो मतलब आई एम नॉट सेइंग दिस इज एनी बिग डील because many people went through much worse. But those were some of the challenges we went through. But really, it was that businesses shut down. They started reducing spends. Your friends wouldn't even take your calls. And I the funny thing is, I started my consulting and एक साल के अंदर कोविड हो गया. So दो तीन साल कोविड रहा, and when COVID finished, my father passed away. And really speaking, it's only in the last 1 year or so that the consulting business has stabilized. But
So do
again,
you want to?
I can't think of a single moment where I said, why is this happening to us? Because we were just so used to, because of my childhood, and I've been living in the boarding since I was 12 years old. 12 साल की उम्र में मैं 12 का था, मेरा भाई 10 का था जब हम हॉस्टल चले गए. And we've been by ourselves. We never lived at home. I left home at 12. So we've had to do everything ourselves. So it didn't matter, frankly.
If that's not confidential, do you want to share any of these success stories from your consulting days?
Well, yeah, not at all. I mean, there are companies. So the good thing is that as a consultant, I have been had the good fortune of working across many sectors. I was basically in my life I've worked in food and beverage, alcohol, alcobev, retail, natural products, and but here as a consultant, I've worked across aviation, waste management, of course, Alcobev, insurance, fitness, technology, beauty products, nutritional products, healthcare, real estate, and I mean all sorts of sectors, and business modeling, helping in mergers and acquisitions, helping in fundraising. So there are many clients of ours who and I have my business partner and I. He's also from my school, 2 years my junior. He's been a banker for 30 years, and he's worked a lot overseas as well. So he has the connects for fundraising. So we've worked across many sectors, and I'll tell you what happens is I've been very blessed and very fortunate, Pritesh, to have really wonderful people as clients. When I say wonderful people, I mean first of all they're good human beings. They're straightforward, they're respectful, they listen to what I say, they do what I tell them to do. And when you see the results of what you have recommended, and those results are good, there's a lot of satisfaction in that. Because I used to joke, Pritesh, that for many years I worked, or let me put it this way, I was paid a lot of money to work with people that I did not like. Now that I'm not getting the money, at least let me choose the people that I want to work with. So that fortunately has happened. So yeah, there have been success stories of companies scaling up, companies being able to raise funds for them. guiding them on organizational structures, on new product launches, and really it's a busier time than ever before for me today. Now, touch wood. And the one thing I've learned personally, and maybe you'll ask about it. See, I've never been a religious man, Pritesh. We grew up with no religion in our home. My father was very English, and Ma was also not religious at all. So there was no puja, shuja, nothing. Only in the last 20 years now, my Ma started doing puja. My father never did till the end. I've also never done it in my life. We've never gone to churches, mosques, temples, etc. Nothing like this. If I've gone, it has only been from an architectural and a historical interest point of view. But one of the things I started doing when my father was ill in the ICU, and not we didn't know whether he'll make it or not. I one day prayed to God and I said, save my father and stuff, and obviously he passed away. So I had my moment where I went and I shouted and God, Bhagwan ko khub gali wali di, man, you don't exist, you're this, you're that, etc. And then, as a period of time, what I started doing now is I do something called practicing gratitude, which means what? And trust me, it works, Pritesh. People used to tell me, Master, yaar, tum bakwas bol rahe ho. Anything that happens to me, I just look up and I say thank you. I don't believe in God, but I believe in a higher power than all of us, simply because science doesn't explain everything in your life. There are things that science cannot explain. So there is a higher power. Whatever that higher power gives me, I say thank you. So, for instance, he's given me this Spotify interview with you today. I say thank you for this. तो मैं कुछ नहीं मांगता हूँ, जो मुझे मिलता है उसके लिए thank you मैं बोलता हूँ, and you will not believe, Pritesh, the more I thank, the more I get. It is unbelievable. That is what happens. Again, I'm still not religious. Anything that happens, like I have a great workout session, I'll say thank you. I'll tell you a real story. About 2 years ago, maybe, or no, 1 year ago, I was driving to the gym in Bangalore, and I took my car out. And the Cubbon Road in Bangalore is my favorite, old British buildings, and beautiful cantonment area, lovely trees and stuff. The AC was working lovely. Some Dire Straits was playing. The sun was shining, and I just drove in. And I just had a thought. I said, you know what? Thank you for this car. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for this beautiful road, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to go to the gym. You will not believe, Pritesh, what happened. I reached the gym, parked my car, went upstairs, started doing my warm up. Before I could start my weights and all, I got two assignments on the phone. Now, you can say it's pure coincidence, maybe, but I'm telling you, practicing gratitude works.
I think as far as God is concerned, superpower is concerned, and higher power is concerned, I think I also typically believe in what Einstein had to say. Einstein believed in a higher power, right? He did not believe
Right.
in religion. He did
Yeah.
not believe in God. He believed that there is
Yeah.
something up there that guides the harmony that is there in world today. And it's time to time, it only makes sense to look up and thank the higher power for the harmony that is there. But I want to go back to your go back in time to your days at Cadbury, right?
Mm.
You joined Cadbury and then later transitioned to HUL, Hindustan Unilever's ice cream business, right? You played a pivotal role in the growth and expansion of these brands. Could you share some insights on effectively launching and managing new products in highly competitive markets?
See, I think the basic rules of business don't change through history
Mhm.
and through geography. People are pretty much the same. Yes, the state of evolution of different markets is different. Today's state of digitization is different, but all business is the same thing. You have a brand or a product or a good or a service. There is a consumer or a customer or a market, and there is a way to sell and there's a way to pay and deliver. Basic rule is like that. Now, I think every business, every brand to be successful has to answer three questions. And this is the difference between good and great brands. See, good brands answer who am I and what do I do?
Mhm.
A great brand answers the third question, which is how do I change your life? So, who am I? I am Nike. What do? I design running shoes. Okay. There is Adidas also. There is Under Armour. There is Reebok. There are so many other brands. How do I change your life? So Nike is not a design show. Nike is an attitude. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's a thought process. So who am I? How do I do? Great brands answer. How do I change your life? Is what great brands answer. Who am I? What do I do? Is what a good brand answers. So we try to focus on that. Very importantly, understanding the business. How does the business work? In the case of ice cream, you're selling a product that is destroyed in 20 minutes without refrigeration.
Mhm.
Now, that has huge challenges from manufacturing to storage to dispatch to consumption. So, understanding the business, the metrics and drivers of business, understanding the consumer as important. And the thing is, Pritesh, most you'll be amazed at how many people have spent their entire lives in this country and still don't understand the consumer. And do you know why? Number one, they're not curious, right? Now you're talking to me, I've noticed everything about you. I've noticed that you're clean shaven, you've got AirPods, you got gel in your hair, right? You're probably sitting at home because I can see a carpet. I mean, I can see a table lamp and some nice gray design curtains, etc., and so on and so forth. So, what am I noticing? I'm being a marketer. You have to be curious. You have to be interested in your environment. You have to have unquenchable curiosity, always asking questions. When I'm at an airport, I'm observing people. I see two ladies, one young, one old. I think to myself, I said, is this daughter and mother or daughter in law and mother in law? And I'm right like 9 out of 10 times. So, one is curiosity, understanding the consumer, and more so, Pritesh, because you are not the consumer, boss. So, the consumer does not think like you. If Pritesh today becomes the chief marketing officer of a company called Sheru BD's BD company, how will you understand your consumer? You don't smoke BDs yourself. You don't know anyone who smokes BDs. So you have to go and immerse yourself with them, think like them. So understanding the consumer is very, very important. And as you get more senior, as you get more successful, your world becomes smaller, not larger, Pritesh. It becomes smaller because your local travel reduces. You're traveling internationally, or you're traveling out of station. Your secretary will stop people from meeting you. So I get a lot of my knowledge and education today, apart from anything else, from talking to Uber drivers, because Uber drivers come from a social sector that you will never be a part of. From talking to my maids, from talking to my gardener, from talking to all sorts of people. So understanding the consumer is very important, and putting yourself out of your own world. So I talk to auto drivers, you talk to shopkeepers, you talk to the Amazon delivery boy who comes, even the guy who irons my clothes, Dhobi, the security guards, the washing women, the housekeeping maid staff. They will teach you much more than any other market research technique. Then, very importantly, understanding competition. And I have had people in my life who have run down the competition. And they celebrate when a disaster befalls the competition. That's the most stupid thing to do, because tomorrow the same thing can happen to you, right? So if there was a disaster that happened to the competition, we would actually go and help them, because we may be fighting. You look at the way people play cricket and all against each other. Virat Kohli can give all sort of gali galore. Did you see MS Dhoni after the IPL final was over? I even put a post about it. He was hugging all the Gujarat Titans players. He was talking to their wives and children. He was talking to the wives and children of his own team, Tamil Nadu Cricket Association people, BCCI people, groundsmen, staff, sponsors, United Cements people. That is what leadership is all about. You know, you were talking to everyone and carrying everyone along. So understanding competition is very important. What did Hardik Pandya say when he lost? I don't know whether you saw the final. He says, if I have to lose to someone, I don't mind losing to MS Dhoni. He said that. He says, वो तो मेरे भगवान है. He says, I always believe that good things happen to good people, and he's one of the nicest people around. So tremendous respect for your competition you need to have. And the other thing I would never do, Pritesh, is never criticize a customer's choice of product. Let me give an example. I've always been an Android person. You are an iPhone person, I'm guessing. Now,
I'm an Android person though, yeah.
you're an Android person. Okay, so let's assume you're an iPhone person. The worst thing for me to do is to tell you how bad your iPhone is. Do you know why I should not do that? Number one, because it is factually not true. Or at least you have no proof that it is true. Number two, remember, if I'm criticizing what you're buying, then I'm criticizing you. I'm telling you that you are a poor buyer, you're a poor decision maker. Should never do that. So suppose you're an Android person and you have, let's say, a OnePlus. And if I'm from Samsung, what I should say, Pritesh, you have a fantastic phone, man. OnePlus is damn good. You know what? Samsung is better. Now, again, may not be true, but I made you feel good about your choice. And I made you believe that you're a discerning customer. So, understanding competition, respecting competition, because भैया वो भी मैदान में हारने नहीं आए हैं, खेलने आए हैं वो। कोई नहीं बोलता है कि जब लोग गुस्सा हो जाते हैं कि भाई विराट कोहली जीरो पर आउट हो गया, रोहित शर्मा ने वो शॉट क्यों मारा। मैं एक ही चीज बोलता हूँ, बहुत जब विराट कोहली सुबह उठकर वार्म अप करके मैदान में उतरता है, तो बैटिंग करने जा रहा होता है, वो ये नहीं सोचता है कि आज ना मैं जीरो पर आउट होकर के आऊंगा, मैं पहली बॉल पर आउट होकर आऊंगा। नोबडी टॉक्स लाइक दैट। वो तो it happens. Even Roger Federer will used to lose to people, who were like 100 ranks below him on a particular given day. So understanding and respecting competition, very importantly, since you mentioned Cadbury's and Hindustan Lever and the transition, there is a lot of legacy learning in many organizations. And if you were to, and since I've worked in so many organizations, Pritesh, there is a lot of data and learning already available. आप उस कंपनी में नए आओ हो और आप दिखाना चाहते हो कि भाई जो मेरे पहले जितने लोग थे सब बकवास थे, सब उन्होंने कचरा करके गए। दैट इज नॉट ट्रू। उनकी वजह से आज कंपनी वहां है जहां आपने ज्वाइन किया है। आपके पहले भी बड़े बड़े महारथी थे, उनके कंधों पर खड़े होकर के आपको मौका मिला है। सो रिस्पेक्ट द लेगेसी लर्निंग and at the same time bring in new thinking. So that's the second thing. And then remember, as we've already talked about changing consumers, एक चीज और है, this new ecosystem, startup ecosystem, प्रत्येक जिसमें लोग बोलते हैं यार, move fast and break things, the so-called Facebook philosophy. अब वो move fast and break things तो क्या हो रहा है कि भाई you're only breaking things. You can see what's happening with Meta's market cap and everything like that. In fact, younger kids like you, they are not even on Facebook or they are not active on Facebook. So what I'm saying is, do not fix what is not broken. जो अभी चीज टूटी नहीं उसको फिक्स करने की जरूरत नहीं, दिखाने के लिए कि भाई मैंने आकर के ये किया। डोंट डू इट, इट डजंट नीड टू बी डन। अगर वो चल रहा है तो उसे चलने दो। आप इवेल्युएट करिए कि आज चल रहा है, ठीक है, कल चलेगा, डिसाइड देन। ये नहीं कि ब्रेक इट बिकॉज मैं नया आदमी आया हूं तो मैं नई चीज करना चाहता हूँ। कंजर्व कैश, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। और ये आज के जमाने में बूट स्ट्रैप सब बोलते हैं, भैया हमें तो समझ में नहीं आता है, हम तो सारे बूट स्ट्रैप थे, सारी बिजनेसेस हमारी बूट स्ट्रैप थी जितने। एंड फॉर्चुनेटली आई हैड द गुड लक ऑफ हैविंग लॉन्च्ड मेनी स्मॉलर ब्रांड्स इन लार्जर कंपनीज, and there was no question of borrowing money from them or from anyone else. That ecosystem simply did not exist. So you had no choice but to generate your own funds. So today people make a big deal, oh हमने bootstrap किया है। मैंने बोला भैया हमारे जमाने में bootstrap के सिवाय और कुछ था ही नहीं। और ये bootstrap term जो था, ये भी term भी नहीं था। Use common sense, very very important. I don't know why they call it common sense, because it is not so common. Common sense is not so common. And I used to have a boss at Heineken, Alexis Nazard. He was the global Heineken brand director, a tremendous student of architecture, very bright guy, part Lebanese, Swiss, French, all sorts of personality. And he used to say, Samar, he's about my age, maybe a few years younger. He wasn't my boss. He was the head of Heineken marketing globally. He used to say, Samar, when people talk about their gut feel, okay, why my gut feel says this. He used to say, your gut feel is a repository of your lifetime work experience. It is not an anecdotal conversation with your daughter in the drawing room. So, भाई मैंने अपनी बेटी से बात करके, because I don't want to take names, but there are CEOs in this country who run their businesses because their children tell them to do this and do that, or their wives tell them to do this and do that. So your gut feel is the repository of your lifetime's experience. जो अपनी जिंदगी भर आपने सीखा है वो आपको बताएगा, that is what gut feel is. Sometimes, so common sense के बाद, sometimes Pritesh, you have to do what is called the greater good. You may have to take some decisions that harm certain people, certain brands, certain processes for the greater good, as they say. मतलब इस छोटे पाप से एक बहुत बड़ा पुण्य भी है. So you sometimes have to do for the greater good. And the tragedy of life is, it is never either or. It is and. Let me give you an example. In the Indian cricket team, do I select Rohit Sharma or Virat Kohli? It is not either or. It is and. You have to select both Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. Rohit Sharma as an opener, Virat Kohli in test comes two down. तो लाइफ वाज आल्सो आइदर और नहीं होता है, आइदर और प्रितेश इज एन इजी डिसीजन टू मेक, it is always an and decision. So you see that, and I think there's a new term called VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. मेरे हिसाब से the world has always been VUCA. It's just that they have a term for it. So managing in this environment and getting used to managing in uncertainty and ambiguity. कल क्या होगा किसने मालूम? So the past is gone. Tomorrow you don't know what is going to be. How are you going to manage today? So doing all that. One last thing is, Peter Drucker, the famous management guru, used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. जो आप कुछ भी स्ट्रैटेजी कर लो, जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का कल्चर है वो स्ट्रैटेजी को खा जाएगा. And cultural transformation is the toughest thing to do. You talked about the integration and transition to Hindustan Lever just before me, and you and I have had this conversation before when you told me Hindustan Lever had taken over Tomco, Tata Oil Mills, and that transition went very badly. They sacked all the people. There was a lot of bad blood and all that. They improved marginally when they took over dollars, but not very well. So culture, and with Diageo, where I worked with the sister concern, United Breweries, I've seen that people really struggle with that cultural transformation because you can change everything, Pritesh. You can change the office, you can change factories, you can bring in money, you can change technology. You can't change people's minds. So the cultural transformation is the toughest one to do. Changing minds is the most difficult. And trust me, if you are able to change minds, you will succeed in everything else. So those are some of the things I learned.
I
I'm
think
sorry to give you very long answers. You may have to edit a lot of it.
no worries. I think Samar, you mentioned tons of topics. I think I noticed you mentioned competition. I noticed you mentioned the current startup culture also, right? There is a buka culture that you mentioned. You mentioned that there is a startup culture where people are there is a continuous pressure, performance pressure,
Yeah.
right? People want to break things. It reminds me of a research work that I read some time back. Uh, it's a sports research that I read. So apparently there is this Israeli group which researches which is researching the goalkeeping trends and in a penalty, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've used them when I was at Kingfisher East Bengal football.
Yeah. So the research says that probably the goalkeeper has the best chance to save a penalty if it does not move, if he stays in its place,
That is
right?
true. That is true.
But eventually, the goalkeepers, more often than not, in fact, 99% of the time, have to jump to the left or the right. And the reason behind it is very psychological. It's not that the goalkeepers are not aware, they are high performers, they are top of their game, they're very intellectual, they're aware that if they don't move, they have the highest chance to save. They move, they jump just because there is performance pressure, just because of the
Correct.
fact that
Correct.
if they don't jump and they miss the goal, if they the goal happens, then they will be criticized. They'll be criticized like
Absolutely. भाई
anything.
मैंने मेहनत तो की. मैंने dive मारी ना. Oh, you're right. Absolutely. You're right. That's a good. That's a good example.
So I think I want to come back to your career, right? And I want to understand the challenges, the obstacles that you've faced in your career, and how you've overcome them.
Oh, I faced many many obstacles. In fact, I thought I'm going to do a post on that itself. Um, People tell me, man, what an amazing career you've had. You worked with some of the biggest and the best companies, Tata Tea, what is today Mondelez, Cadbury's, Unilever, you know, Energizer Batteries, which is a Fortune 500 company, Dabur, Spencer's, United Breweries, Heineken, etc. What an incredible career. I mean, your dream career. So I tell them, I said, do you know that I've been rejected by double the number of companies that I've worked for? For every job that I got, at least there are two companies that decided not to hire me. And that's again the balance that I was talking about a little earlier, Pritesh, that any company that hires you has taken a decision to hire you instead of someone else. Now it can easily go the other way around. They hire someone else instead of you. So I've been rejected by at least twice the number of companies that I have worked for. So handling rejection without letting whether internalizing it without feeling that they are rejecting your candidature for the job. They're not rejecting you as a human being. If I'm a batsman and they're looking for a bowler, if I'm a batter, because you have to be politically correct now, if I'm a batter and they're looking for a bowler, So if Virat Kohli applies to a bowling position, he won't get it, but and he wouldn't feel bad. But if he applied to a batter position and he didn't get it, that's when he'll feel bad. So similarly, you have to say, look, I have certain skill sets. They are looking for some other skill sets. There's no problem. I my skill set someone else will take. But it's like man, I've gone to buy apples, and the person tries to sell me oranges, and I said, "नहीं भैया संतरा नहीं चाहिए, सेब चाहिए." Do you think the orange feels bad that he didn't buy me? Because someone else will come and buy the orange, but it is not easy to feel like that. So I've been rejected by double the number of positions that I've got jobs for. That's number one. Number two, I have failed interviews. The only two interviews until I did my MBA, the only two interviews I failed were the IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta interview. I sat, I got through the CAT entrance examination, cleared the group discussions also. In the final interview, the most weird interviews I've ever seen in my life. I mean, to my mind, if those interviews were held today, the interviewer would be sacked. Ajeeb Garib kind of questions पूछ रहे थे. But anyway, so both I am Calcutta, I am Ahmedabad, I would have gotten through, but I failed the interviews. But later on, I went to both the institutes and I've done many leadership talks at both those places. I've done many guest lectures. I've conducted classes there. So I got my revenge in some fashion. So I've so that is the second thing. I have twice in my life I have been sacked.
Mhm.
Now I'm not going to tell you which companies I was sacked from, but I've been sacked twice in my life, and nothing to do with my merit. In one particular case, they were moving out the entire business and division to China, and I didn't want to go to China because China wasn't the story that it is today. In fact, today also, I don't know what kind of story it is. So they said, "I'm sorry, we have no place for you in the organization. You'll have to leave." But they were kind enough to say to me that you can work until you find a new job. So, and the second time, now what happens when you get sacked, Pritesh, is if you're not a secure person, it's a highly insulting and highly stressful time, especially for men. And I'll tell you why. Unfortunately, in India and Southeast Asia, a man's entire sense of self worth is driven by लड़का करता क्या है,
Mhm.
लंबा है, छोटा है, पतला है, मोटा है, गोरा है, काला है, पैसे है, नहीं है, डज नॉट मैटर, लड़का करता क्या है. आप मतलब शादी करने जाएं तो सबसे पहले आप पूछा जाएगा, अच्छा अच्छा लड़का करता क्या है, नंबर दूसरा जात क्या है उसकी, राइट. तो औरतों से पूछता, अच्छा गोरी है, लंबी है, पतली है, खाना बनाना आता है, इवन टुडे इज लाइक दैट. यू वॉच समथिंग कॉल्ड इंडियन मैच मेकिंग, on Netflix. It's a hilarious program, but our entire sense of self-worth is on our work. So the problem is, if I get sacked from my work, then people think I should kill myself now. I'm being sacked from life. No, you're not being sacked from life. You're just being sacked from a professional opportunity. So handling that, I've already told you, since you asked me about personal, I've been bitten by a dog. I've got rabies injections. I've been shot through my hand. When I was doing my summer training with Tata Tea, they called me to Raipur to start. And Raipur in the summers is like 46, 47 degrees. And there was no mobile phones and stuff. This is 1988. And they had sent a telegram to my symbiosis college saying that tell him not to come to Raipur, tell him to come to Cochin. The telegram never reached me because I had already reached Raipur. And I stayed in Raipur for 3 or 4 days with no news. I was supposed to meet a certain person at a certain place. I would go there every day, wait out there, come back, and I had no money. So I was staying in a like a rest house next to the railway station, and with no idea how I'm going to get back, what I'm going to do, nothing. Um, and I have no idea when they're going to get in touch with me. Somehow I managed to get money. I mean, I had some, I think maybe, I'll tell you exactly how much I had. Made a phone call, somehow got through to my college and found out that they had told me to come to Cochin and not to Raipur. And now you reach Cochin and they will handle everything. I said, I have no money. How am I going to get to Cochin? So I took a bus from Raipur to Pune, a normal, what you'd call a DTC kind of bus, with obviously no air conditioning, Robert, and no nothing to lie on, and you have to sit the whole time. Now I had in just about enough money to buy the ticket. I had no money for food. I had no money for water, nothing. So I got into that bus, and 19 hours I sat in that bus like this to get to Pune. I didn't eat the whole journey because I had no food. But when they would stop, I'd go and drink water from the nalka, etc. And I said, I'll drink a lot of water, तो मेरा भूख खत्म मर जाएगी. Then I reached Pune and I had hair up to here. I had grown my hair and I hadn't had a bath for some 2 days and I was stinking. And then I reached the office and they told me that you have to report to. By then, of course, then I had some friend there, got into their bikes, went to my PG accommodation, had a bath and change, picked up some money, booked a ticket to Cochin, reached Cochin. They apologized a lot and stuff. Today, if that happened, people would be like on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that nonsense. So that was one episode. A second episode was, which I think I must tell you, is there was a tea garden called Urna Band where my father was, and there was a bonus payment time, and typically by law you have to pay minimum 8.33% bonus to the labor, and the maximum is 20%, and they wanted more. And that year the garden had not done well, and we couldn't pay, so they had get out my father. They had surrounded him with weapons and spears and everything, and they had locked him in his office. And people were putting spears and knives and all in his neck. And he was sitting there. My father, the coolest man on the planet, he's sitting there, and he says he went out to sleep because of the sound of the crowd and the heat and everything. वो तो सो गए. So these guys got very insulted. कि साले हम तुमको धमका रहे हो, तुम सो रहे हो. So anyway, then by chance, well, luckily one assistant came down and he came running to the garden. So I called up the local police thana. I still remember. I won't tell you the name of the policeman, and you might have to censor what I'm going to say. But the police came and immediately announced Section 144, and he walked through. And I was sitting in my bungalow, and I could see on because the factory was at a higher level, and the office and the hundreds of workers standing with local guns and stuff and ready to kill my father. And I still remember very clearly, Pritesh. This he was a Khasi, a police officer. I won't tell you his name because he retired as a very senior level, and he had a swagger stick under his arm. And they announced they had a district magistrate with them. They announced Section 144, which means not more than 5 people in one place. And he told everyone to disperse. Nobody dispersed, so he started walking through the crowd. And what these tea garden laborers do, they put the women in front so that you will not assault a woman. And this one woman got up and she tried to stop him. She had a knife, like a dao, what they call sickle, in his hand. He had this swagger stick, and he just hit it like this. He opened her up from here to here. Her mouth opened up with all blood. She collapsed on the ground. Another man got up. He slapped him, took out his gun, fired in the air. And all these laborers running down from there, some of them started fighting back. On that day, the police fired and shot and killed 5 laborers in front of me. And thereafter there were some many who were injured as well. When it had all settled down, my father, myself, we told our father. I was 18 years old, only 18 years old. I went up with the assistants. We loaded the dead bodies of the laborers into our jeep, along with police, district magistrate, everything. We loaded the injured in another jeep. We took the dead bodies, for cremation along with their families and formalities. We took all the injured to the hospital, got them admitted and stuff like that. And there were many other things that happened after that, which I can't. Well, I don't know whether I can tell you or not, but you got this expression of shock on your face. But later on, all the gundas were rounded up and put into prison, and the police and my father were the people who had threatened my father and threatened to blow his head off and threatened him, etc. Proceeded to, shall I say, put them into a condition from which they would never walk in their lives and never be able to eat with their own hands. So, beyond that, I will not tell you more. You'll probably have to censor this part as well. But it was necessary there. We may disagree with it today. It was a decision taken 40 years ago, 1983, in a time that was very different, in a situation that was very different, and you're dealing with 10,000 illiterate labor. So sometimes a show of force was very necessary to do that. And trust me, after that, for the next 30 years, there was not a single labor problem because of the example that my father made. So, you can imagine, in front of a father like that, what you're not going to go and complain कि मेरा हाथ टूट गया कि मेरे को बुखार है. So those were some of the things. And then, of course, many things. There are politicians in power today, Pritesh, who were basically gundas and extortionists in that time. When I used to work for Pepsi, we used to work in UP and Bihar. We used to have a Pepsi uniform. My team used to tell me, "साहब आप ना उस एरिया में आप यूनिफॉर्म पहन के मत जाइए." ऐसे क्यों? इससे 100% आपका अपहरण हो जाएगा. You'll get kidnapped and the company will have to pay ransom. And at least two of those people went on to become chief ministers. One chief minister has passed away, he's not alive anymore. One chief minister is still currently a very prominent chief minister in a state in India. These were basic extortionists and they used to run kidnapping racket. The problem with this country is वो सब सफाई फाई करके के मतलब सब कुछ it all becomes clean. So I faced all that. I faced insecure bosses. I faced toxic work environments. I faced all that kind of stuff, and I just feel that I'm not running down what young men and women are facing today. But trust me, if they had to go through even 5% of what I've been through, their current problems would pale into insignificance.
I think those are some really crazy stories.
He's gonna go back and say, "Boss, ये episode the पूरा का पूरा ही censor करना पड़ेगा." You know.
it was a I think crazy story. I think, but I want to come back. I want to come back to probably the happier bits. I want to talk about the favorite part of your career.
Oh, that's an easy one to answer. I think both Kingfisher and PepsiCo have been my two best favorite jobs. I think because the job fitted my personality, Pritesh. And really, I was telling my daughter the other day that, in my life, there are only two jobs that I really wanted and that I got. So, and I told her, I said, we're so blessed because we may crib and cry, but trust me, Pritesh, I was telling my wife also, the biggest decisions in our lives have happened painlessly. A job change, selling a house, selling a car, buying a car, getting my daughter into school and college. All those big decisions have happened painlessly. We've always found very good people to buy property from. I bought three houses now, one, two, three, four houses in my life, and I've sold three of them over my entire career. Wonderful people that we bought from, wonderful people that we sold to. So the biggest things in our life have really happened painlessly, and that is the greater reward. Okay, electricity goes away today. It's not a problem, boss. Your car has a small dent. It's not a problem because the biggest things in your life have been painless. So I think both these jobs fitted my personality to the T. And these were the two jobs that I really wanted. And then I got both. Yes, there have been other jobs that I wanted and I did not get, but I also got jobs that I did not want. But both Pepsi and Kingfisher were jobs I really wanted, and I was interviewed four times for Pepsi. I was rejected three times, and then I got it the fourth time. Not for other rejected for various reasons. Once it was salary, once the location and function did not suit me, and once I was getting the offer letter, and then they said, "Hey, boss, you work for Hindustan Lever?" I said, "Yes." So we've signed a non-poaching agreement with Hindustan Lever. I said, "Do you think you should have told me this before you started interviewing me and stuff like that?" But Pepsi and Kingfisher, I think, fitted my personality. I love the companies. I love my job. I love my team. I love the travel. I loved meeting interesting people, sports people, business people, movie stars, politicians, industrialists, actors, etc. Amazing places I've visited, met some really interesting people, conducted some incredible events. And you must remember, in those days, Pepsi was a big name in Delhi
Mhm.
and Kingfisher was a big name in Bangalore. So if you were
Bangalore.
part of those companies, they opened a lot of doors for you and they gave you a lifestyle that was something that was, you could not have other been a part of. So both these companies, I think, also gave me a lot of freedom. There was a lot of glamour, a lot of hard work, uh, tremendous satisfaction, and I think I learned a lot in both these companies, and they changed my life forever, frankly. So those were the two companies I enjoyed the most.
So Pepsi and Kingfisher, right? Although you
That's right.
don't drink, you know how to sell drinks, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a Coke now and then, but even that I've stopped for many years now. I don't drink soft drinks or spirits. But here's the thing: I taste all beers. Even today, and the thing is, I'm a trained taster. When I started working with Cadbury's, we were doing ice creams, and I was a trained organoleptic tester because I used to neither drink nor smoke. And I loved it, but I got fed up in a few months because we used to make 12 flavors of ice cream every day. And I had to rate each of those flavors on five different aspects. So, taste, mouthfeel, body taste, flavor, aftertaste, etc. And I had to have 60 spoons of ice cream every day for 4 years. 60 spoons. I couldn't eat ice cream for 20 years after I left. Same. So, but I can even today, for instance, I consult with a lot of beer and spirits and wine companies, and I will taste and I can tell you which beer is which. Is it a good beer, bad beer? What style is it? An IPA? Is it a stout? Is it bottom for lager, ale, whatever? Because for me, Pritesh, they're all equally alien tastes. If you're a regular beer drinker, you have a favorite few. If you're a whiskeys, you have a favorite one or two. If you're a cigarette drinker, you have one favorite, and you can never be objective about a competing brand against your own favorite brand. But if you don't drink any, then they're all equally alien to you, and you can be completely objective about it. So it actually works in my favor, frankly.
Awesome. But you mentioned that you since you while we were at Pepsi, while you were at Kingfisher, you met a lot of people, right? Who was the most memorable person you met, and what happened there?
Oh, very difficult question because there were many, many. So here, the first of all, I have to tell you that I respect only sports people.
Mhm.
I don't respect politicians. I don't respect business people. I don't respect anyone other than sports people. And I've said this to the most famous sports people in the world. In fact, Rahul Bose and I were talking and we were playing rugby. And I happened to mention this to him. He said, "Yeah, even I respect only sports people." I said, Bosey, you're an actor and a sports person. So I can choose whether I want to respect you or not. I'll respect the rugby player in you. I won't respect the actor in you. But I think sports is the purest form of labor. So, I've met, I mean, from Usain Bolt to Carl Lewis to Boris Becker to Formula One racers, Michael Schumacher to Lewis Hamilton to, I mean, anyone and everyone. Linford Christie, some of the greatest, Serena Williams, I mean, all of them, yeah. And I think I've learned from all of them. um, I've met presidents and prime ministers. I've met Indira Gandhi. I've met Narasimha Rao. I have met Gyani Zail Singh. I have met Atal Bihari Vajpayee during the course of my career, and each of them has taught me something or the other. Um, I mean, there are many stories. So, for instance, uh, I asked Serena Williams once that you played so many people, and you played against such legendary players yourself. When you're playing the game, I mean, you know, do you think that you're playing against so and so person? And she said, no, I just focus on the yellow ball. So I play the ball, not the player. So that's something I remember. Um, I remember talking to Carl Lewis, and I asked him. I said, Carl, I'm an amateur runner, and when I was coming to meet you for dinner today, I got really excited, and I was running 10 kilometers. So I started running really fast, and by 7 kilometers, I was dead, and I really struggled to complete 10. So he looks at me and he says, "Take the emotion out of running." And I looked at him and I got it like this. He says, "In fact, take the emotion out of everything. You should, when you're working, you should be like a machine. Like your mental state should not affect the way you work." And I saw the way he ate and stuff, and also that's another lesson I learned. Then he taught me another lesson. He says, I'm a really, and then Carl Lewis is to my generation what Usain Bolt is to your generation. And I asked, Carl Lewis said, I'm a really lazy guy. I just like sleeping late, but I work for this boss who's a slave driver, and he kicks my ass out of bed every day, and he says to me, "Go and lead, go and train, go and motivate." So I'm looking at him like this, and I said, "Carl, who's your boss?" So he said, "Oh, some guy called Carl Lewis." And I said, "My God, he's so conscious of the image of Carl Lewis and the person Carl Lewis." He said, "As Carl Lewis, I have such a tremendous responsibility to people." So that's, I mean, another lesson I learned. Um, what else? I mean, I met Anthony Irwin, who was, that's another incredible story. Let me know how we're doing on time, huh? Pritesh, you want to
Yeah,
close it
we're good.
anytime?
We're
We can
good.
do
We're
that.
good.
I met Anthony Irwin, who's an incredible story, right? Anthony Irwin is a double Olympics 50-meter gold medalist, swimming champion. In the 2000 games in Sydney, he was 19 years old and he won the 50-meter sprint gold in swimming. He was the fastest man on the planet, Anthony Irwin. Went through a crisis of confidence, gave up competitive swimming for 8 years. At 27, 28, he started swimming again, competed in the Rio Games in 2016, and won the 50-meter gold once again, 16 years after he had first won it, to be again the fastest man in the pool over 50 meters. I mean, that is an almost inhuman feat. So there was this German woman who wanted to write his autobiography, and she was chatting with him, and she came up to him And this happened in front of me, and he said, and he's a supremely intelligent athlete. He's also got Tourette's syndrome. You can Google what Tourette's syndrome is, and he's got a whole lot of other ADHD and God knows what all. But incredibly intelligent. And what I've realized, Pritesh, you will be amazed at how intelligent the best sports people in the world are. Because all sport is played between the ears, boss. You need to use your brains and intelligence. Look at Mahendra Singh Dhoni. You can bloody just see the intelligence that radiates out of him. So he said, "No, I'm sorry. I can't let you write my autobiography." So this lady said, "Why?" And I asked him, "Tony, why are you saying that? You're such an inspirational figure." He says, "Yeah." I says, "What is she going to write? She's going to write that I won in 2000, and I won again in 2016." He says, "I have only won in my life. Unless I have had the privilege of losing, how can I teach anyone anything?" एंड आई वांट टू टेल सर, आपके चरण कहाँ हैं, मुझे छूने दीजिए। कौन ऐसे बात करेगा प्रीतेश कि अगर मैं केवल जीता हूं तो मैं आपको कुछ नहीं सिखा सकता हूं, जब तक मैं कुछ हारा नहीं हूं जिंदगी में, व्हाट कैन आई टीच यू? इनक्रेडिबल. सो आई हैव मेट many such sort of sports people who taught me amazing stories of resilience. And I mean, the two of them are my favorite stories, frankly. If you have time, I'll tell you one story. There used to be a Sri Lankan cricketer called Marvan Attapattu.
Mhm.
He's retired now. Marwan Attapattu scored very heavily in domestic cricket, and he was selected to play for the Sri Lankan national team. And in his first test, he scored zero in the first innings and one in the second innings. And he was dropped from the side. He was dropped for 4 years. He went back to domestic cricket in Sri Lanka, scored tons of runs in domestic cricket once again, was selected a second time to play for Sri Lanka in the national team. In his second test, he scored zero in the first innings and zero in the second innings. He was dropped again for 4 years. Now imagine he's been playing cricket at the highest level in domestic cricket for 8 years, and he's been waiting for 8 years to score his second run in Test cricket. Anyway, full credit to the Sri Lankan selector. They selected him a third time. And in his third test, he again scored zero and zero. And he was dropped from the team. For the next second test of the same series, there was his friend, good friend, and who also became captain, called Roshan Mahanama, who's now a
Mhm.
commentator. He got injured. And they said, you know what, we need, and they used to play the same position. They said, you know what, Marvin, we know you've got the talent, but I don't know why you can't do it, but we're giving you another chance. And from that day, he did not look back. In the next 16 years or some, no, in the next 10 years or so, he scored 6,000 test runs. He scored six double centuries, 16 centuries, and became captain of Sri Lanka and retired as one of the most loved and successful cricketers that Sri Lanka has ever had. But it took 8 years to score his second run. So I always tell youngsters today that जो लिखा है उसको कोई बदल नहीं सकता है. मैंने ना अपने बास्केटबॉल कोच को बोलता था, अशोक साहब, I played basketball for India under 19, and we had a reunion in our school 5 6 years ago. And I told him, अशोक साहब, मेरी जिंदगी में ना हर चीज 10 साल लेट आती है. प्रमोशन 10 साल लेट, नौकरी भी 10 साल लेट, जो नौकरी चाहिए मुझे 10 साल लेट, हर चीज 10 साल लेट आती है. सो ही पुट्स हिज हैंड ऑन माई शोल्डर एंड सेज, देखो समर, समय से पहले और हैसियत से ज्यादा कभी किसी को कुछ नहीं मिला है. सो if Pritesh wants to become whatever, and he's doing this podcast with me today, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, boss. This is where you're supposed to be. So I have some incredible stories. And as you grow older, you get a little more philosophical and a little more thoughtful, because you've seen so much of life and you've seen ups and downs, utar chadav, sab aapne dekha hai. So you survive with that, because you know that there is a larger plan for you. Have faith and trust in the universe. There is a larger plan for you. The only thing is you can't see the plan at the moment. And Winston
Mm.
Churchill used to say, if you're going through hell, keep going, because you are going to come out at the other end of it. So those are, I many of these people have taught me amazing things. And I mean, I have one more story, but I think we're running out of time, because I think you have what, maybe one last question to ask after this. A famous story of Sylvester Stallone and how he started in Hollywood.
Mhm.
But yeah,
So we can go
or
ahead.
maybe I'll tell you. You
Yeah.
can you can you can you can edit it out, because I just recently started watching this Tulsa King on Geo Cinema, which is
Mhm.
a Taylor Sheridan show. I don't know. Have you seen shows like Yellowstone and all that stuff? So anyway, Taylor Sheridan is the hottest writer in Hollywood today. So Sylvester Stallone came to, my daughter says, Dad, why do you wear these jeans and boots and leather jackets? And I said, come, I'll show you some Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And she said, now I understand. I said, you cannot imagine, for a man of my generation growing up in India, the influence that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone had on us as men. You cannot begin to imagine that influence. In fact, I would say that today you don't have those kind of role models, because media is so much. Today I know what Kim Kardashian had for lunch, and where Amitabh Bachchan went to do his, pray, etc. So Sylvester Stallone came to Hollywood in 1971 with about $100 in his pocket, a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, and a pregnant wife, his first wife. And he had nothing. He had a script in his hand. And he put his wife in a seedy apartment in downtown Los Angeles, and he started going to the studios to see if anyone would be interested in buying the script. And obviously, everyone kept saying no. His money kept going down, and his wife was expecting. And then one day he walks in, after a month or so, he walks into a studio that said Robert Chartoff and Irvin Winkler. And he gave them the script, and they said, you know what, leave the script here for 1 week and come back to us. I said, okay. So he left the script, went back after a week, and they told him, you know what, we're going to give you $25,000 to walk away from this script. We give you $25,000, you sell us the script. He says, no. So he says, what do you mean no? And he's got like $50 in his house. He said, we're offering you more money than you've ever seen in your life. He said, no, I think it's worth more. Let him get out of here. Take your script and go. A week later, they called him back. And they said, you know what? We'll give you $250,000 to walk away from this script. He says no. And now he's down to 30, $40. It's a true story, by the way. And he has spoken of it himself. They said, you know what? Who the hell do you think you are? He says, no, I want to make this movie myself. I want to star in it. They started laughing. He says, have you ever acted in a movie before? So he says, yes. He's acted in a porn movie. He'd done what we used to call a blue film. Uh, so they laughed. I said, yo, man, we're making the biggest mistake of our lives. You're some Italian immigrant who speak like this. We can't even speak properly. And anyway, so that went up and down, and now he's down to some 20, $30. So they call him one day and said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to give you $1 million to make this movie. But because it's $1 million, you can't shoot on location. You'll have to go back to your house, to your hometown, and shoot it. And we have only 3 months to shoot it. So and we can't give you any salary. We can't give you any fee as an actor. So he says, okay, can I take 25% of the gross of the profits? So they started laughing. They said, you think he's going to make money? He said, yeah, I got a feeling. He says, okay. So he goes back. He goes back to Philadelphia, and he shoots the film in 90 days. He shot it in $975,000. He had a budget of $1 million. The movie gets released in 1972. In the year it got released, it beat Raging Bull or Taxi Driver. I think Taxi Driver and Godfather 2 to win the Best Picture. Sylvester Stallone was nominated for Best Director but did not get the Oscar. But the movie was Rocky, and it got Best Picture, and the movie went on to gross $500 million worldwide, and Sylvester Stallone's 25% share was $125 million, and that is how Stallone started in Hollywood. Now, this story I'm telling you, और अभी भी मेरे रोंगटे खड़े हो रहे हैं, because imagine the man's self-belief, courage of conviction, and faith in himself. So those are the kind of stories that have inspired me all my life, Pritesh.
I think
You've
I
never
think
got a guest like me, and you say, इसके बाद तो मैं किसी से बात भी नहीं करूंगा.
I think I think those are some really really amazing stories. Those are some really really amazing people that in fact I have also looked up to all my life. I've also always believed that uh, you should have people that you look up to. You should read their stories, you should understand their
Yeah,
struggles, and try to, even if you don't become like them, try to imitate what they did, try to learn from what they did,
absolutely.
uh, regardless of whether we
There
become
is
like them or
learning
not.
from everywhere, is the point.
Yep. But yeah, one last question. Like I said, I have one
Yes,
last
last
question.
question.
I want to understand, like, you've worked across multiple businesses now as a consultant as well, and be it funding, be it scaling, and all of that. What are some common challenges that you see across businesses?
A very good question. I think tremendous challenges. First of all, इस देश में ना कंसल्टेंट की कोई कदर नहीं है. People don't take consultants very seriously because, and the problem is consultants themselves, because 95% of them are full of shit. Pardon the French. They're all bullshitters, and there is a time when you can become a consultant. ये नहीं कि भाई 5 साल की नौकरी के बाद आप consultant बन गए. I see life coaches that are 25 years old. How old are you, Pritesh?
I'm 32. Yeah.
You're 32. Thank God. So I've seen life coaches who are 25 years old, and मैं पूछता हूँ कि भैया आपने लाइफ कितनी देखी है कि आप लाइफ कोच बन गए हो? तो इसे सर मैं आई ट्रेन द 21 year olds. ये भी सही है भाई. There is a market for everything in this country. So I think the problem is consultants. Most of them are not really good, and people have a clients typically have a distrust or a mistrust of for consultants, and most consultants have either been in consulting all their lives, so in the big consulting companies or by themselves, and they've never run businesses. They've never been in line functions. So I think that is where my partner and I have make a difference, because we've worked in very senior leadership positions, in very large organizations, in very complex environments. We've also launched smaller brands, and we've worked across industries, and we both have, at least I can say this for sure without sounding arrogant, we have spotless professional reputation. Personally, I don't know. I'm sure my wife and my daughter have 100 complaints with me, but professionally, we have spotless reputation. So we have a high acceptance amongst people who know us. But the first challenge I faced, Pritesh, was that I worked my entire life with large professional multinationals, American, British, Dutch, Indian, etc. Most of my work, not all of it, but a large part of my work is with SMEs and MSMEs. They've never heard of us, so they don't know us. So we are starting from scratch again. So number one, they see this यार अंग्रेजी बोलने वाला आदमी आ जाया, थोड़ा stylish, westernized one. So they have to get over that. Then I have to tell them कि भैया हिंदी में बोलता हूँ और बंगाली समझ लेता हूँ, पंजाबी समझ लेता हूँ, और हिंदुस्तान का सारा कोना मैंने देख लिया, और मैं हिंदुस्तान के ऐसी जगहों पे गया हूँ जहाँ पर आप नहीं गए हो. So then they start getting a little comfortable. But basically, culturally, people say, "यार, what will a consultant teach us? हमको we know everything about our business. तू क्या सिखाएगा हमको?" Stuff like that. And then there are some people who have a trust issue. Okay, what is he come here for? मेरी नौकरी तो नहीं चली जाएगी. कहीं अगर ये सब लोग करेंगे तो मैं क्या करूंगा? तो उनको you will not believe, प्रीतेश, मेरे ऐसी भी कुछ मतलब वार्तालाप हुई हैं कि भाई मैं बोलता हूँ कि आप जब विराट कोहली को देखते हो, आपको क्या लगता है कि वो पलंग से उठ करके नाश्ता खा करके नहा धो करके सीधा मैच खेलने आ जाता है? उठने और मैच खेलने के बीच में देयर इज अ स्ट्रेंथ कोच, देयर इज अ कंडीशनिंग कोच, अ रिकवरी कोच, अ न्यूट्रिशन, अ डाइटिशियन, अ साइकियाट्रिस्ट, साइकोलॉजिस्ट, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. बहुत सारे कोचेस हैं उसके. ये सब मिल करके विराट कोहली को विराट कोहली बनाते हैं. आई सेड आप विराट कोहली हो, हम वो कोच हैं. वी हैव नो इंटरेस्ट इन रनिंग योर बिजनेस. भैया हमने 30-30 साल कर लिया है, हमें और नहीं करना है. But we will make you better players, and we are on your side. We are not here to take your jobs. We are here to help you do your jobs better. हमें मौका तो दीजिए. अगर हमें आपको हम अच्छे नहीं लगे तो हमें सैक कर दो 3 महीने में, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? अगर मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ कि भाई मेरे गुड़ पारे खा के देखिए, बिना ट्राई किए हुए आप कैसे बोल सकते हो कि अच्छे है कि नहीं है? एक खाइए ना. आपको अच्छा नहीं लगता है तो थूक दीजिए, अच्छा लगता है तो दो खा लीजिए. सो वी हैव दोस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. Now, typically, the challenge I face is, let's say I am Roger Federer, and you have never heard of tennis. तो मैं आपको कैसे समझाऊं कि मैं करता क्या हूं? Also, you see a lot of clients don't have ambition. जैसे भैया अच्छा पैसा बन रहा है, नौकरी वगैरह मतलब we are comfortable. अब और क्या क्यों करें? Why should we do more? So you can't create ambition in a person, and very often the snakes are within the organization itself, Pritesh. I've had places where the CEO has said yes, the number two person who is his nephew or son, वो अंदर से छेद कर रहा है. Because they become insecure कि ये मतलब पापा से बात कर रहे हैं तो मतलब मेरा क्या होगा, kind of thing. And I'll look like a fool. And also you have to manage trust issues, you have to manage perceptions, you have to tell them. In fact, on Monday I'm flying, my partner and I are flying to Nasik to start work with a new consultant, with a new client, and there are certain question marks that the clients have. The CEO and number two people are 100% with us, but we have to help because we don't want to be seen as the outsiders who will come and teach you how to do business. No, हम आपके साथ, so those things are there. And then a couple of things I've noticed is, for instance, आप उनको बोलो कि भाई 10 करोड़ रुपए का की जमीन खरीदनी है, हाँ जी हो जाएगा, they'll buy it. 5 करोड़ का प्लांट और इक्विपमेंट खरीदना है, हाँ हो जाएगा, नो प्रॉब्लम. 2 करोड़ डिजिटल मार्केटिंग है, ये क्या चीज होती है? सो जो एनीथिंग दैट आई कैन टच एंड फील, जो ठोस चीज नहीं है मेरे हाथ में दे, उस पर पैसे खर्चने के लिए लोग झिझकते हैं. देन देयर आर फैमिली इश्यूज. आई हैव हैड सिचुएशंस वेयर द फाउंडर ऑफ द कंपनी हैज कॉल्ड, he has 4 daughters and he has 4 sons-in-laws, and the daughters don't work in the company, the sons-in-laws work in the company. उसने अपने चारों जवाइयों को ऑफिस में बुलाकर मेरे सामने उनकी पैंट उतार दी. Now, can you imagine how difficult it will be for me to work with those people? So you don't have to, you manage those family issues also. There is insecurity with people, and even in big companies, boss, the largest, one of the largest consumer product companies in this country, largest biscuit maker in this country. Now, I will not take the name. I've done many projects for them. I had one person there who was the head of a department. He's number two in the company. He said no to working with me because he said, "You know the CEO very well. That person is not the CEO anymore. You know the CEO very well, and you will come and present this as your own project, and the CEO will sack me." I said, "Hello, my CEO is not my client. You are my client. I will not even meet the CEO. I will present it to you. You remove my name, put your own name, and go and present it to the CEO. Just pay me the money." He didn't give me the job because he was so insecure. So I've handled the insecurities. We've handled politics, jealousy, selfishness, posturing, dikhana, कि भाई I am bigger than you, and we've seen territorial behavior कि भाई मेरी नौकरी खतरे में है. And then things like, वो बाहर का बॉस, आपने तो बियर बेची है, आप एविएशन के बारे में क्या जानते हो, या आपने तो कैडबरीज की आइसक्रीम बेची है, आप मतलब रियल एस्टेट के बारे में क्या जानते हो. देन आई टेल देम के भैया देखो, रूल्स ऑफ बिजनेस आर सिमिलर, and there are many things that I can bring from the outside world, and there's something that you can teach me. So partnering is very important, Pritesh. Telling them that I'm on your side, I'm not your enemy. Together we will defeat the enemy. Stuff like that. And a lot of clients think that they know everything about their business, which is not true, because business is changing rapidly, the consumer is changing rapidly, and very often people are not able to see the larger picture. They're not able to see into the future. And sometimes clients change their minds also frequently because someone who you have never met will call them. लाइक आपने क्लाइंट से बात कर ली, सब कुछ हो गया, हमारा एक सिचुएशन हुआ था, हमने अग्रीमेंट तक साइन कर लिया स्टैम्प पेपर पे, फिर एक महीने तक पूरा साइलेंस, और फिर पता लगा कि उन्होंने प्रोजेक्ट कैंसिल कर दिया. बस यही है कि उन्होंने एडवांस नहीं दिया था हमें, और ये भी नहीं बताया कि प्रोजेक्ट क्यों कैंसिल कर दिया. फिर हमें पता लगा कि कोई कैलकाटा में कोई स्टॉक मार्केट में उनका प्लेयर है जो उन पैसे इन्वेस्ट करता है, वो उन्होंने उसको बोल दिया कि भैया आप ये सब मत करो, ये क्या करने की जरूरत है, आपके पास इनफ पैसे है ना, क्या करने की जरूरत है. So, handling all those kind of things, and also as a consultant, one of the challenges is that you don't have complete visibility to what's happening in the organization because you are consulting only on a particular field. So those are some of the challenges. I think the main challenge has been in making a mind shift from working with so-called professional large multinational companies into a not so professional MSME, SME environment. Having said that, the clients I have today do not fall into those categories. They are wonderful human beings. Most of them are educated overseas. At some point of time, they've worked in large companies. They've traveled the world. They are sophisticated, and they're not petty people. So, it's a good happy mix of both sort of worlds. थका दिया आपको मैंने,
Awesome, Samar.
प्रीतेश.
No, no, good. I think
मेरा ने
Samar,
मेरे
I
तो
think this was
गर्दन में दर्द हो गए ऐसे नीचे नीचे देख देख करके.
Samar, I think this was one of the most unconventional discussions I've ever had. I think
Not
these
one
are
of the most
the
unconventional.
most unconventional discussion I've ever had. These are some of the stories that I have never heard of, nor could I ever expect to hear of. Thank you so much for coming on the episode. Thank you so much. And
Thank
one
you.
last question is, let's say if our users were to reach out to, what would be the best platform to reach out to you? LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is the best platform because I think I've maxed out on my Facebook. I'm
Mhm,
not so active on Twitter.
mhm,
Instagram, I'm a little wary of because
mhm.
I was joking with someone. I said, if a girl sends you a message on Instagram, immediately block him because it is a man, it is not a girl. So LinkedIn is really the best, and I have the largest community. I think I have a somewhat 30,000 community or something like that. That's the best platform.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Samar. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Pritesh.
I
Thank
think
you.
this was a crazy discussion. If you enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe and share your thoughts and the guests you want. एंड आपको ना हमारे कम्युनिटी के लिए लिंक्स मिल जाएंगे नोट्स में. यू शुड ज्वाइन फॉर ब्रिलियंट नेटवर्किंग एंड पार्टिसिपेट इन द अपकमिंग इवेंट्स एंड फॉर कनेक्टिंग विद पॉडकास्टर्स. दोबारा मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट